For some time now, it's been a tradition of sorts to have a brilliant person from the About.me team on the stage. And apparently, they've decided to send all their brilliant people named Ryan here. So after Ryan Freitas from last year, we get to welcome Ryan Fujiu. Ryan is a super cool and super talented head of growth at About.me, who's passionate about working with startups and companies to solve big problems that affect lots of people. He won awards for both design and his marketing campaigns, and he'll tell us a little bit about building what people really want. Ryan, would you come up here and join me? You have the floor.
Thank you, Masa. And just wanted to say thanks for having me here today. This is the first time I've been to Montenegro, and absolutely beautiful country and beautiful people, and just seeing everybody here today, just totally inspired to talk to you guys about the internet and talk to you about startups and talk to you more about some of the things that I've learned in my experience, specifically around, unfortunately, failing. So here I am. This is my Twitter handle, @RyanFujiu, and like Masa said, I'm the head of growth at About.me, and I'm responsible for user acquisition, basically getting more people to sign up for About.me, getting more people to use it, and getting more people excited about it. So just as a show of hands, how many people have heard of About.me before today? Okay, and how many of you actually have About.me pages? Okay, cool. And how many of you are considering or already working with a startup? Okay, good amount. So one thing about startups is that they fail. And startups fail every day. And in the United States specifically, roughly 90% of the startups who have actually gotten funding end up failing. And that's kind of a crazy statistic when you think about it, because what other industry has a 90% failure rate? And it's something that really strikes close to home for me personally, because I've actually had 2 startups who failed. One of them was a startup that I founded in college, and the other one was one that I founded in between my first and second jobs. And although it was a really rough time, but I really learned something that was really important in helping me today with About.me, and something that I'm going to share with you guys. And because of that, I'm still smiling. So one question is, what would happen if more startups actually succeeded? And to me, the world would be a better place. Like, think about it. Tesla, SpaceX, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Dropbox, with Chris is here today to talk about Dropbox. These are all products that people use on a daily basis that have really enhanced our lives and have made our lives much better. So one question is, how do we do that? How do we take us from a point where we have 90% of the startups out there who are failing and get it down to 80% or 70% or 60%? And really what we need to do is build products that people want. And I know that sounds like, okay, yeah, of course, like, duh, build products that people want. It sounds like a really easy and interesting thing to do. But in actuality, it's really hard, right? Because people are fickle, and a lot of times what entrepreneurs think people want aren't exactly what people actually want in the real world out there today. So this is kind of the focus of what I wanted to talk about today, which is how to figure out how to build products that people actually want, and how to create an iterative cycle where you talk to your users and figure out what people want, and then iterate on your product to actually deliver that value to the end user. So I don't know if you guys can make that out, but the main way that you can figure out what people want and to build products that people want is through customer development. And this book here is a great resource for learning about customer development. It's called The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development. It's written by Patrick Blaskovitz, and it costs around $25. So I'd really recommend, if you want to learn about customer development, you should go onto Amazon and buy this book, and it'll really help you. It will help you understand the principles of customer development and be able to apply that to your business or your product. And so the primary goal of customer development is to focus on your customers and your market straight out of the gate, with an emphasis on discovery and learning. So I'm going to say that again. So the primary goal of customer development is to focus on your customers and your markets straight out of the gate, and with an emphasis on learning and discovery. So one of the things that is great about living in San Francisco is that I get to be exposed to lots of entrepreneurs. And one of the great things about entrepreneurs is the passion, right? The passion for the products, or the passion for the service that they're providing to the users, or the problems that they're solving, or making a positive impact on the world. But what comes with that passion is, unfortunately, a lot of entrepreneurs confuse passion with facts. So they confuse, like, they're passionate about something very specific, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're passionate about it, or that everybody has that same problem, right? So a lot of entrepreneurs will take the next step and come up with this great idea, figure out what it is, go into product development, raise money, go into product development, build this thing, and put it out into the world, and guess what? Sometimes it doesn't work, right? And a lot of times, like, if you look at that so many startups fail, 90% of the time it doesn't work. And this is the primary reason why, in my mind, this is one of the primary reasons why startups fail, is because they build products that people ultimately don't want. And it doesn't matter if you're like the best designer or the best product manager, or you have the best engineering talent on your team. If you build a product that people don't want, it doesn't matter. It's going to fail, and you're going to be one of the 90% of the startups who end up failing. So the idea behind customer development is to take a hypothesis that you have, and everybody has it within any business, regardless of what it is, right? So you have this guess about, okay, I'm going to build this product, and it's going to solve this problem for a user, or it's going to solve this issue that people have in their lives, and everybody's going to use it. But what you want to do before you actually launch is validate that hypothesis. And the way you validate it is you talk to your customers. And this is something that is super important for us at About.me, and it's something that I wish I had done in my previously 2 startups that failed. And it's really simple. So everybody understands what talking to your customers is, right? You go out and you find your customers and you talk to them. And in other industries where, let's say, like a brick and mortar store, it's really easy to talk to your customers because they might come into your store every day. But when you work on the web, or you work in mobile specifically, it's really difficult sometimes to interact with your customers, and the product is what interacts with the customers. And it's beautiful because that's what allows for scale, and for you to have millions and millions of users and have a team of 15, 20 people, where there's no way you could do that if you had a brick and mortar store. But the downside is that you don't get direct access to your users, and you don't get to talk to them about, what is their reaction to this product? What are they thinking about? What is their objections for using it? So this is the primary basis for customer development. And I want to give you some examples of how you can find your customers to talk to them. So if you already have an existing product out there, like About.me, we already have a product where people are using it. What you can do is create basically a survey that you can show to your users. And we use a product called Qualaroo, Qualaroo. And it was formerly Kiss Insights, but it's a great product that fits into, that you can drop into your website or your mobile website, and it shows a little pop-up that comes up in front of the users after they're logged in and asks them a very specific question. And at About.me, I'll give you a quick example. We say, do you have About.me in your email signature? And it's a really basic question that people know right off the top of their head, and they can say either yes or no. And when they answer it, we ask to link off to another survey. We say, hey, thanks for answering. Do you guys want to give us some more feedback on the product? And if they click through, they go to a survey, a full 8-question survey that's hosted on survey.io. So that's also a great resource for you guys if you want to do some more customer research. But basically, the survey.io survey has 8 questions, and one of them is the product market fit question, which I'll go into a little bit later. But at the end, we say, hey, would you be willing for us to follow up with you to ask you questions to clarify some of the answers that you gave us in the survey? And if they say yes and they put in their email address, that gives us kind of free reign to email them to ask them to talk to me or to talk to us. And from that point, what we do is we email them and we say, hey, would you be willing to talk to me for 10 to 15 minutes about creating a better experience on about.me? And then once you have them, at that point, you can start talking to them about your product, and you can start talking to them about some of the problems that they have or some of the things that they're doing. So that's a great way to find customers to talk to if you already have a product. But a lot of people out there are considering their startup, or they don't necessarily have a product yet. And it might be a little bit harder to find customers to talk to. So one strategy that I've seen used in the past is to identify, okay, you have this product, who are your target customers? Who are the people who are going to ultimately be using your product long term? And then find out where those people are on the web, or I guess in your community if they exist. I'll give you a couple ideas or a couple things that we did at about.me to really figure this out, and the whole idea is to figure out what people want before you end up building it, because how much time and effort does it take to plan out your idea, to hire a designer, to hire a developer, to build the product, to launch it. And if you don't have the right idea to begin with, and if it's not validated, then all that's for naught, because if people don't want it, they're not going to use it. Okay, so at about.me, one of the things that we wanted to focus on is retention, so getting people to come back more often to the product. And as you know, for a lot of you who have already signed up for about.me, the beauty of it is it's a set it and forget it product. And you can set it up one time, and you kind of, you put it all, you get it right, and then you can kind of leave it there, and it's fine for as long as you want, or until you want to update it, like if you switch jobs or something major happens in your life. But as a business, we want people to come back, and we want people to come back often, because that's how we grow. Because we can't get people to share their page, or we can't get people to kind of do the things that we want them to do if they're not back, if they're not on about.me and signed in. So we went through the process, and we got all the people who were willing to talk to us through the survey. And then so I gave them a call, and I talked to 20 people. And the first question I always start with whenever I do customer development is hey, when did you sign up for about.me, or do you remember when you signed up for about.me? And that's a great question to start with, starting with something really simple and easy for users to understand, because everybody knows, or everybody has an approximate understanding of kind of when they signed up. So that's a great way to break the ice, because it could sometimes be awkward when you talk to a new person. You want them to feel open to you when you talk to them, and you want them to be honest with you and not try to kind of sugarcoat the answers, because that'll give you some false data. So the first question, how often or how long ago did you sign up for about.me? And then I'll follow up with, do you remember why you signed up in the first place? And what's great about that question, and that's what I strongly urge all of you to ask when you do customer development, is because it'll give you insight into why people signed up, why people are using your service. Because everybody has an idea in their mind of kind of an idyllic view of, oh, these people are using my product because of A, or these people are using my product because of B and C, right? And everybody has this very oh, everybody fits into these 4 buckets, and they're perfect this way. But in actuality, that might not be the case, right? And you want to learn more about why the users are signing up, why people are using the product, what value that it provides in their lives, because that could give you tools to end up getting more users to sign up. Like one specific thing that I do is I'll take the feedback that I get from the users when I ask that question of why do you sign up for About.me, and I'll put that on the landing pages that I use to convert people to sign up. So one time I talked to a user and he was like, okay, do you remember why you signed up for About.me in the first place? And he's like, yeah, I signed up because I want to make it easy for people to find me on the web. And that was really clear, but it's something that I didn't really think about before. And then I turned around and put that on the homepage, and it had a 15% increase in signups just because of what that person said. So you really can take this content that people talk about, and you can learn about it, and you can use that to get other people to sign up or to communicate the value proposition of your product to other people. So, sorry, back to retention. So the goal of the 20-person conversations was about how can I figure out how to get people to come back to About.me. And one of the questions is, hey, do you come back to About.me? And why? Like how often do you come back to About.me? Why do you do it? And just to get people kind of in that mode of thinking about the product and thinking about why they come back. And it wasn't no surprise. People were like, I don't come back often. I don't really know why I would come back. I set it up once and now I can forget about it. Not a big deal. And the follow-on question was, hey, what would prompt you to come back? Like, if we could just if we could wave a magic wand and get people and we could build any product for you that you wanted, what would it be that would have you come back? What would you come back for? And it was interesting when people started hearing that question, they were like, oh, well actually, what would be really interesting is if I could see who viewed my page, or I could see like what people out there were viewing my page, like this specific person. And I was like, okay, interesting, why do you want to see that? And they're like, well, I want to be able to connect with those people, or these people are interested in me for some reason, and I want to come back and connect with them or see, why are you interested in me? What can I do for you? What are the things that, prompted you to come to my page, and why are you interested in me? And after I heard like 4 or 5 people start saying basically the same thing, you start seeing the pattern emerge, and you're like, okay, this is a product that people actually want, right? People are, like when I talk to the customers and 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 7 or whatever all say the same thing, that they would come back to see who viewed their page. That's what validation looks like, and that's what you want to come to. So we actually, before we started the customer development meetings, I sat around with Tony Conrad, the founder, and Ryan Freitas, who came out here the last couple of years. And we were just like brainstorming. We were like, okay, what can we do to get people to come back to the site more often? And we came up with like a whole laundry list of ideas. Some of them were like really difficult, and some of them were like easy to implement. Some of them were super difficult and kind of tedious for our engineering team and our product team. And we would prioritize them like just any other meeting. We're like, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and then we're going to do this big launch, and everybody's going to be excited. And now, this metric is going to double, and we're going to ride off into the sunset. But what it turned out was none of our users that we talked to said any of those ideas. They didn't care at all. And in customer development, since you have them on the phone with you, you can even ask about something specific. You're like, hey, would you come back to see this, or that? And they'll be like, yes or no, and you can actually get direct feedback from the users, and you can ask why, right? And the why is important. So we had this laundry list of features that we thought would bring people back to the site, and it turned out that through customer development, we invalidated almost all of the ideas that we had come up with in the meeting, and we started to hone in on this hey, who viewed your page, right? Because that's what people wanted. And it was actually kind of a controversial thing for us internally, because we respect our users' privacy, and we know, some people might not want to know if I visited, or if they visited my page, or they visited somebody else's page. And it was a pretty controversial thing. We ended up doing it, and we launched it, and it was actually the most successful product that we've ever done. Retention increased by over 100% at the time that we launched it, and it's continued to grow since then. And it's something that we look at and we're like, okay, if we would have done the other ideas that we came up with originally on that list, instead of kind of going back into customer development, talking to our customers and figuring out what people want, we would have done something totally different, and we would have probably been off base, and we would have never known what customers really wanted, what people really wanted to do, unless we went and talked to them. And doing customer development really gives you an insight into your users' minds or into your customers' minds, where you can figure out, hey, is this what I really want to do? Is this what they really want? And that's the power of customer development, is to be able to take ideas that you have, validate or invalidate them beforehand, before you go into development, and then, or figure out new stuff, right? And figure out what people want, and then build that, because that's the key. That's the key. So on the flip side is figuring out what people don't want. And this is something that I wish that I had known when I had done my 2 startups before, and I'll kind of give you some insight into what happened with those and why they failed. So one of them was a wine website that I started in college, that we came up with this brilliant idea, or we thought was brilliant, where we would say, okay, everybody loves wine. Like, we're gonna match you and recommend wines to you based on some of the wines that you've tasted in the past that you've liked or didn't like. And we're gonna recommend wineries for you to go visit based on these characteristics of, how do you like wine? What kind of wines do you like? Do you like red or white? What varietals do you drink? And we went out and we had this idea. We thought it was great. We went out and talked to a bunch of people in the wine industry, and they were like, oh yeah, like, this is a great idea, you should do it, you can monetize in these different ways, and you can get distribution through these channels, and all of these people are going to want to partner with you, and the wine touring companies are going to come in and do this and that, and the wineries are going to want to do this, and so everybody was really excited. So we were like, okay, awesome. So I took what was left of my life savings, and my friend also did the same, and hired a designer and hired an engineer and went and built this whole thing, and we went into kind of a cave, and my grades dropped and all this crazy stuff, and came out with this product. We did this big launch. I borrowed money from my parents to market it and to spend all this money to drive traffic to the site. And we got a bunch of traffic. We got a bunch of people signing up, which was great. And then something crazy happened. Well, something not crazy now, but something crazy to me happened. Nobody cared. Like, not a single person who signed up cared. We had 3,000 people sign up on the first day, and only 50 people came back in the following week to the site. And we were like, why did that happen? Like, I thought we built this, like, we had this great idea that everybody, that we thought everybody wanted. And what it turned out, after talking to a few customers after the fact, it turned out that people don't actually want recommendations that way for wine. People want recommendations from friends that they trust, that they know about wine. They don't want recommendations from some website that says that they can tell you what you want. And then additionally, people don't want to visit wineries from a website that are recommended from a website. They want to visit wineries that their friends have been to, or somebody recommends to them, right, that they know and trust. And that was like a huge eye-opening experience to us. And it basically took something that we spent all of our time and all of this money and all of these resources on, and it basically amounted to nothing, to a learning experience. And we spent all of our money. I don't even know, we had to take on consulting jobs after college to pay for it. But that wasn't one of the experiences that I wish now, if I would have known now what I knew then, what I would have done was I would have came up with this idea, went out and talked to real customers, people who really like wine, and I would have asked them directly, hey, how do you get recommendations for wine? Like, what's important to you when you get recommendations for wine? What's important to you when you get recommendations for visiting wine country or wine tours? How do you do it? What's the process you go through now, right? And if I would have asked those questions in the beginning, I would have had a clearer understanding of what people actually wanted, and I wouldn't have built something. I wouldn't have spent like all my money and all this time and cost my grades to build something that people didn't care about, right? And that's kind of that's the focus, that's the thesis of customer development. And that's something that I wish that I had done then, but we do now on a daily basis with About.me. So we go out and we have an idea and we validate it before we actually spend the time and resources to build it. So that's the key, right? Is you're gonna have a hypothesis about what your business or what your company or what your startup is going to do. And everybody has it. Regardless of what it is, if it's B2B or if it's enterprise or consumer or a website or a service, like everybody has this idea of what their service is going to do. And the customer development will allow you to either validate that hypothesis or invalidate it. And what you want to do is get as much data and as much information beforehand than afterhand. Like if you're validating your hypotheses after you launch your website or after you launch your service, it's too late. It's too late. And if you look at the statistics, with 90% failure rate, it's pretty clear that 9 out of 10 people don't validate their service or their idea beforehand. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, to talk to you about those experiences. Oops. Okay. I kind of messed up the formatting here, but what we want to do after you validate your hypotheses or after you validate whatever idea that you have for your service or for your website, you want to release the smallest thing that you possibly can. So sometimes people will refer to that as an MVP or a minimum viable product, which I'm sure a lot of you here have heard. But sometimes like releasing a small thing is like a landing page, right? Or just like something really basic and simple that you don't have to spend a lot of time and money developing, that will start giving you data or insight into if people actually want this. So a great example and something I've seen recently is selfie.com, which is just all it is it's just like you would imagine, selfie, like taking a picture of yourself, which has become enormously popular. But yeah, it's just a landing page. It's a video in the background and a landing page where you can put in your email address and name, right? Super simple. But what they're doing is they're validating to see if people are actually interested in this. Because if you put a landing page out there and it has like the value proposition of your hypothesis that you're trying to test, and you come back and nobody signs up for it and nobody cares about it, then that's a clear indication that people don't want that, or people aren't interested in the value that you're providing. So maybe it's best at that point to like kind of go back, take a step back, and change the value proposition and start driving more traffic to it to see if that converts. Or kind of take a step back and even go further and say, hey, maybe this isn't something people want, right? Or if you build a landing page and people sign up and people like it, then build like, what's the minimum viable product? What's the smallest thing that you can possibly build and release out there that'll get you data back that you can evaluate and say, okay, this is working or this isn't working. And a lot of people fall into the trap where they'll be like, oh, well, we need this feature, or we need that feature, or we need this or that to really show like the true value proposition of the product. And a lot of times that you don't need that, and it's best to just take a step back. What's the minimum thing? What's the smallest thing that you can put out there in the world that people can start using, and then you can start getting data back, right? So when you start getting data back, you can start to see how people are using the product, and then at that point, right, you reach out to them and you start talking to them. You reach out to your users and start talking to your users about, what's the value this provides? What do you want to see? What are the features you want to see, right? Because then you personally will probably have a list of all these features that you want, right? And you cut out a bunch of them to get into your minimum viable product, and you launch it and you're like, okay, I have this great idea for all these features that are coming down, in the product roadmap. But what you don't want to do is fall into the trap of, okay, I'm going to build all of these features now just because they were my ideas. And a lot of times, your ideas totally suck. So what you want to do is go out and talk to your users at this point. Get the data back. See why are they using your product, what value they're getting out of it, and what would they want to see. Like a great question that I always ask to all of my users when we do customer development is, if I could just wave a magic wand and build anything that you wanted, or build anything, what would it be, right? If I had a magic wand and I could do anything for you right now, and it would be live on the site today, what would it be? And when you ask that question, it gets people to really open up and to tell you what they want, right? And it's really hard to get people to tell you what they want, because everybody's like, they have an agenda, you have an agenda, everybody kind of has this thing where they have their guard up. But if you can get people to truly tell you what they want, then that should inform the roadmap, right? Then you should start building those features. And then there's an iterative loop, then there's like an iterative cycle where you release the smallest thing that you possibly can, you release your minimum viable product, you get feedback, real feedback from your users about what they like and what they don't like and what's interesting about the product. And then you go back into your product development cycle, build those features, release those out into the world and into your users, and then you go and then get people to start using it, and then you go back and talk to them again. And you say, okay, is this what you want? Is this providing value in your life? What should you do? And that's how iterative product development, and that's the basis of customer development, and how basically all of the companies and all of the major products that you use today started. Like one of my friends was one of the first employees at Facebook, Alex Schultz. And when they started Facebook, when they were getting around 1 million users, it was just a directory. It was literally like a directory of college students where you could go and like see, who's in your class, or who's your neighbor down in the dorm, and are they available to hook up, right? And what they did was they were like, okay, this is working now, but they went out and talked to their users, and they're like, okay, what do you want to see? And they wanted to see more about them, what they were doing now. That's what I heard the most. And this is the story that he tells me, that he tells me and he tells like almost everybody else when they talk about customer development, is like, what do you want to see in Facebook? What do you want to see when you look at somebody's page? And the overwhelming answer to them was, what are they doing right now? Right? And that's where the news feed came from. And that's where the feed started showing up. And that's where like what's happening, you log in Facebook, you see big what's happening, or that's what you did before, or you did see before. Or what photos are they taking? Like, and Facebook today is just this treasure trove of like information of like, what are people doing now? And then so they got that, and they went back and built the feed, and they went and talked to their users, and then it started to take off, and that was one thing that they knew that people wanted before they had built it, even though when they did build it, there was such a huge backlash against it that they knew they had to stay the course because they knew that's what people wanted.
We have about 10 more minutes left, so if you don't mind just quickly wrapping it up, and then we'll get to the Q&A, because I know there are tons of questions around.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome.
Of course. So basically that's the basic concept of customer development. It's talking to your users, getting feedback before you building the smallest thing possible, and then getting more feedback and using that as your iterative cycle so that you can stay in the realm of what people want instead of going out and saying, okay, I have these grandiose ideas, and starting small. Everything starts small. And just taking it from there and seeing where the market takes you. And that's where product market fit happens, and that's where people come up and build great products.
Thank you so much. That was great. So I'm going to get to the questions at the very end. We're hopefully going to have time for a couple of questions of your own, so keep them in mind. But before that, I wanted to ask you a few things. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is failure, which is usually a conversation killer, except when you're on a stage like this. So you were talking about validating an idea, which is, if done right, supposed to prevent the kind of failure that we see in startups a lot. But what I end up seeing in the media a lot lately is this treatment of failure as almost a necessary step in a startup's life. And it ranges from it's okay to fail to this whole like, you must fail, you need to expect to fail kind of feeling. And my initial reaction to those kinds of things in the media is always like, no, this is not what I want to do. I want to succeed and make money and save the world and buy an island. So I wanted to see what your attitude to failure is. Do you think it's something that should and needs to be prevented, or is it a normal part of the startup life and learning process?
Totally. I mean, yeah, like failure in a lot of ways is completely necessary, and it's something that's kind of a dirty word in a lot of ways to a lot of people, but it's a great thing, right? Because when you're failing, you're trying something new. Right. And everybody, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're starting out, or you're a product manager, you're an engineer, you need to fail, right? Because that's how you learn. And one of the main things with failure is that you just want to fail fast, right? And that's like the main thing, is just like, how fast can you fail? And how fast can you test and be iterative with the things that you're doing, where if you fail fast, you learn fast, and then you change,
Yeah,
right?
you adapt.
And that's one of the basis for kind of doing this iterative development cycle where you're releasing something small. Because the smaller the thing that you're releasing, the less effort you had to put in and the less time that you've spent on it. And if you release something small and you fail quickly, then you can kind of go back and recalibrate and do something that is actually going to work or try something new. But in my personal experience, I've failed so many times, and I've learned so much.
You should get a medal for it, seriously. Like, once someone fails, you should get a little, like, medal to feel you better.
I mean, you do internally, right? Because it's a tough pill to swallow, because you have these assumptions that, you know, you're so smart and you know all this stuff and you're so experienced with what you're doing, and then when you fail, you're like, how did this happen, right? But the key is, like, everybody fails, no matter who they are. And if you're in the web or mobile industry, you fail, you know, sometimes every week with what you're trying to do. But the goal is, like, hey, if you did, why did you fail? Did you learn from that? And then can you take that and build a better product in the future or build a better company in the future? And I think that's kind of the key to failure. But it's not a bad thing. Like, everybody does it. It's good.
It's good. As long as you do it fast. Then
as long as you fail fast. Like, the worst thing that you could do is to fail slowly.
Got it.
Failing slowly will kill your company and will kill. Failing slowly is the end of your company. Okay. So try to fail fast if you can.
So a thing about you that wasn't in this presentation is that you actually have a bachelor degree from Berkeley in biology, which is really interesting considering what you do today. You won awards for design, for your marketing campaigns, yet you started off in bio, which is very different. So I wanted to know sort of how you made that transition from bio in college to what you do today, and also how that knowledge and those skills that you got from that degree help you in, you know, your day-to-day work and in this industry.
Yeah. So my whole life I had dreamed of becoming a doctor. I come from my family respects that, and it's like kind of before the internet came along and before this whole new wave of entrepreneurs and this whole new business that's came up, like being a doctor was something that, you know, everybody looked at and like, okay, this is a stable future, you're going to make lots of money, it's a well-respected thing. So I spent kind of my whole high school and college doing pre-med, studying to become a doctor.
Yeah.
And during college, kind of the internet started popping up and people started making money, and I started looking at it and building products for people, building products that solve real problems in people's lives through the web and through mobile was just too strong of a draw. And it was something that it was difficult for my parents to kind of swallow, because I was on this track and then I was asking for more money to come and start this company that ultimately failed. But it was good, and now I wouldn't regret it. I don't regret anything, and I think that this space to be in is the best possible space for young people in the world today. Like, I look at finance, I look at, you know, there's great things to do in biotech, and there's lots of industries that you could potentially go into, but the web and mobile and this business is going to be, to me, is the future, and it provides the biggest opportunity for rapid growth, to progress your career quickly, and also to have, you know, ultimately what everybody wants is like huge exits to make an impact on the world, and this is the best vehicle to do it. So to me, the internet, specifically around web and mobile, are the best industries to be in.
Great. So an impressive thing about .me is that in October 2010 it had 0 users, right? No one. And then a year later, October 2011, it grew to 1 million. So would you mind please telling me, in a room full of, 300 strangers, what all your secrets are? Everything that you did.
Yeah. So the key, when you think about growth, and everybody wants to be, you know, Facebook, everybody wants 1 billion users, or Dropbox, like Chris, they have 300 million, 400 million users. But user acquisition is difficult. And what you want to do before you start acquiring lots of users is to reach product market fit, which is like, can people love your product? Can you get to a place where the core product has enough value in it that people actually really enjoy using it and want to use it every day and want to share it with everybody they know? So there's a survey that I mentioned earlier called survey.io, survey.io. that it's a great resource, and it has this one very specific question that, that we use to evaluate if something has reached product market fit or not. And the question is, how disappointed would you be if this product wasn't available to you to use anymore? And then you put in your product name. And the answers are very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, you know, kind of disappointed, and not at all. And what you want is the more people to answer very disappointed.
You want people to cry if
yeah,
they
you want
don't
people to
have
cry if your
access
product
to
didn't exist anymore.
Right.
So the general rule that we've seen is if 40% of the people who respond say they'd be very disappointed if your product didn't exist anymore, that's the point where you've reached product market fit, and then you can start aggressively pursuing growth tactics. So anything before you reach that 40%, and that's just a rough estimate, so different industries or different markets have different values for it. But once you reach 40%, you can start aggressively pursuing growth tactics. You know, like A/B testing. You can A/B test like your homepage and your landing page to hone in the value proposition to get more people to sign up. You can A/B test all of your flows and get more people sharing the product, get more people inviting their friends to it, or do very specific things to your product to increase the virality of it on external networks. But I'd just say, you know, before you start pursuing growth tactics, definitely work on the core product till you get it to product market fit, because if you don't, what you see happening is you're going to acquire all these users, right? Everybody's going to sign up, and then they're going to get to a product that they don't care about, and they're never going to come back, right? And what you want to do is get everybody excited, get the product into a place where it's great and people come back often and people love it and they're engaged with it, and then start scaling growth, right? And then start scaling your user acquisition and start maybe looking at paid channels or Facebook ads or Google ads, and then definitely like optimizing all of your conversion funnels.
Awesome.
But get to product market fit first before you start growth.
Sounds good. I'm going to open the floor for questions. We have time for maybe 2 to 3 questions. Do we have anyone with a burning desire to ask Ryan something? We have mics around here, I think, so just put your hand up if you have a question. Over there.
Thank you. So my name is Tanya and I come from InfoStud, Serbia. I'd like to ask about hypotheses that are somewhat experience-based. What to do with them? How to validate them when you already have a sense from earlier experiences that something is good, is supposed to be good?
Sure, that's a great question. So, whatever you're thinking about, okay, is this an experience-based product? What you might want to do is you have an hypothesis of how people will interact with it and the experience that they're going to actually have. Go out and find people who are already having that experience or who would potentially want it, and then ask them specifically about, hey, what do you do when you're trying to get this? Or what do you do when you're trying to, like, what's the process look like when you're trying to buy a toaster oven on the internet? Like, what do you do when you're trying to go through that process? And get them talking about what they're currently doing, why they're doing that way, if there's any limitations to what they're doing when they're doing it that way, and if there's any opportunities that they see. Oh, does anything bother you about, you know, when you're doing things with this experience, right? And when you ask like a question, hey, does something about this bother you? That really gives people a great way to express like some of the frustrations that they have with that particular process. And when people can express their objections or their frustrations with a particular process, that's where a lot of times the opportunity exists for your company to come in and say, hey, we're going to do things better, right? We're going to do things that we're going to take some of the frustrations that you're having with this particular process, and we're going to fix them X, Y, and Z, right? And we're going to fix them this way. And then you can also take that information and use that in your pitch to investors or whoever you're trying to get. Because you can say, and this is something that we do also, and this is something that is a great way to pitch ideas. It's like, okay, this is how people do it now, right? They go through this process. They go, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 when they're trying to accomplish this, right? And people generally with step 4, people generally have a really tough time with this step, and people really struggle with this. And my company is going to fix it by doing this. And that's a great way to not only kind of crystallize what you want to do in your own mind, but also help other people who are going to be investing in your company. And who also might be investing in your company, or people who might be joining your team. It helps them understand the problem and how you're going to solve it.
Thank you so much. We are only 7 minutes behind at this session, which makes me ridiculously proud, so I'm going to quit while we're ahead. I'm going to let people please ask Ryan questions. You have his Twitter handle over here, and also you can grab him around the floor or afterwards at the coffee break.
Yeah, so I signed up to be a mentor, so
he did.
I'd love to, I'd love to talk to you more if you have any specific questions or ideas around your idea, or anything that has to do with customer development or validating your idea or building really small minimum viable products. So if you have questions, come talk to me. I'd love to learn more about you guys and what you're doing.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you. That was really, really good. Thanks.